Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear distinguished guests, a very warm welcome to our annual Bio.be Essenscia event. Agility, Belgium's biotech booster. We have a very inspiring program for you this afternoon. It's a bit different than other years, but we are very happy to welcome you. There will be a live debate. There will also be videos from a couple of our member companies, and you can also be part of it because you can send in your questions through the chat system. You can also tweet or be on LinkedIn, on social media, and therefore you can use #biotechboost. So stay tuned with us. But before we deep dive, let's have a look how it all started since the beginning of the COVID-19 crisis, and how an epic wave of collaboration and solidarity arose in the research, development, and manufacturing of our Belgian biotech ecosystem. A snapshot. What a journey in such a short time frame. I think we can say that there is hope and that there is light at the end of the tunnel and a lot of ambition with our companies. We will now further deep dive how they experienced this crisis, how they have accepted the challenge and how they have adapted to react to it. And we have a couple of experts in our panel. We have with us today Minister Philippe De Backer, Federal Minister responsible for the COVID-19 task force. Also, Joke Comijn, Director Investor Relations from Argenix. Geoffrey Pot, Vice President Operations Takeda and also President of the Bio.be Board. And Cédric Volanti, President Biopharma Solutions Novacep. The debate is moderated by Frederik Druk, Secretary General of Bio.be. And you, dear guests, don't forget to challenge the speakers. Please send in your questions through the chat. We will be able to ask them after the debate. Frederik, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Tineke, and hi, everyone. Welcome to this live session from the Bio.be Essenscia. And welcome to all the speakers and you, the Minister. Let's go immediately to the debate, and we'll start with you, Minister De Backer. Welcome. You'll see in the intro video that we've seen a lot of biotech, biopharma companies were involved in the strategy against the COVID-19. Can you explain a little bit how you have integrated this asset of Belgium, the Belgian biotech and biopharma companies, into the government's plans to face the pandemic?
Yes, so the task force started end of March. So I was asked by the Prime Minister to lead the task force, and of course I have a background in biotechnology, so I was already quite well acquainted with the whole ecosystem, going from manufacturing, the pharma companies, but also the research and development and the biotech companies coming out of that. And so it was one of the first actions that we took is to reach out and to see how, for example, in testing, they could be helpful. So immediately we saw that a lot of the clinical laboratories were short on reagents, short on staff, so it was very difficult to scale up the testing effort in Belgium. And so we reached out to, first of all, universities to see how they could help, but very quickly also the biotech and pharma companies trying to scale and to automate the whole process. And so very quickly, after 2 weeks, we were able to do already above 10,000 tests a day, and very quickly after that we came with the screening of, let's say, the elderly homes also, because we know that at that moment it was a huge issue. So in 2-3 weeks we were able to do a screening, preventive screening of all the elderly homes. But on many fronts, the whole ecosystem really came together and helped us, from manufacturing swaps to setting up systems to do a better data monitoring, lending out machines to do the testing effort. So a lot of expertise that is in the system was really used within the task force to get sometimes very innovative solutions very quickly. And now, of course, the focus is on the vaccine, and also there you see that a lot of different Belgian biotech and pharma companies are involved. From a government side, we're also supporting this financially, but also making sure that they have contacts with each other and also can link internationally to some of the larger companies. So yes, the whole ecosystem really came together, and I'm really happy and thankful also that this happens, because at the same time it also allowed Belgium to really reach out to the world and show what kind of expertise that we have in this biotech and pharma ecosystem.
But it was no easy thing to do. You were active in the task force, you were leading the task force, COVID-19. Can you say a little bit from inside, what was the level of confidence of your partners in the government saying about working with the local biotech and biopharma companies if the frontier were closed? So it was a challenge.
Yeah, it was a challenge because it's still largely unknown. I think a lot of people who are around this ecosystem know the richness of it and the diversity of it, but of course, for many policymakers, this was new, and I think that some of the clear examples that I already mentioned showed what the biotech and the pharma sector can do together, and what importance it has also for our country. But what we faced immediately was, for example, there are a lot of European regulations in place, of course, and for example, the IFMPS FAG really was also helpful in having open discussions back and forward without diminishing anything about quality, but really to help to bring certain products to the market. Setting up clinical trials, for example, universities and pharma companies really work together very closely, setting up these kind of collaborations. And of course, we also saw a lot of manufacturers coming up with very innovative solutions. Sometimes it took a little bit longer than we wanted, but we pushed them and they pushed us to really have this collaboration moving forward. And so also on medical equipment, for example, medical devices, a lot of innovative solutions were found and put into the market under the derogation of the Belgian authorities.
You're speaking about biomanufacturing. We have Cédric Volanty here. He's heading the biopharma services company Novacep here in Belgium. So this is a contract and development manufacturing organizations. You have two business sites here in south of Belgium, in Senef and Gosselies. And you just joined the company in March this year, and then the COVID-19 crisis came. So can you elaborate a little bit about how you've been impacted by this crisis in your first steps in the company?
Yes, you're right. So we at Novacep have currently two production sites in Belgium, in the south part of Belgium, so close to the airport of Charleroi, in Gosselies and in Senef. And we are currently the European leaders in terms of virus vector production, with the only European site that can produce virus vector at the commercial state. So we are currently finalizing PPQ for several customers in the US, so product that will be on the US market expected in 2021. From that experience, we are above all virus manufacturer, and so in terms of knowledge of viruses, Novacep is pretty well positioned. And that's probably what explains the fact that we keep calm with the COVID-19 crisis, and we could have a huge debate with our employees about the potential impact of the COVID-19 crisis in Belgium for their health, for the operation of our plant, in terms of risk, but in terms of opportunities as well. So coming back to my early days at Novacep, it has been a pretty a pretty strange and challenging onboarding with the company, effectively, because a few weeks after I started, we had this crisis. In terms of management, and probably because we have a knowledge in virus and because we know how to operate and how to mitigate risk with viruses, we were able to maintain our production all around the crisis, so we never stopped. Our production have never really stopped. And I have to admit that we have not yet been fully impacted by the COVID-19. Actually, the major impact is right now, because there is a fight against the virus all around the world, and most of the suppliers are putting the production of their supplies at first use for the vaccine production. And as a manufacturer for other projects, which are of importance, because when we speak about virus vector, we are speaking about treating patients for genetic disease, we have difficulties to supply. So the impact is now and probably for the next coming months rather than in the past.
I would like also to say that we've been in touch during crisis, since you might at once be able to also produce part of diagnostic material, and that was. We've picked up a little bit the theme today, the agility that boosts biotech business, based on this kind of experience. So you are able to be agile. The kind of company you're leading is really ready to adapt its way to process and to produce if needed.
Yes, it's definitely in the DNA of a company like Novacep, which is a CDMO, and in DMO you have development, and it means agility. And in instance, when we get in touch around the COVID-19 crisis, that was for the production or the filling of some vials with the reagent that will serve to preserve the virus for further testing with a PCR testing. And we developed a very creative approach. Our team was very motivated and eager to be part of this global fight against the virus at those early days. Unfortunately, the solution have not been elected by the federal government. But nevertheless, this is, I think, a force and the skills and a strength of the biotech environment to be extremely agile. And this crisis have, I think, demonstrated that our environmental economic system, the biotech network present in Belgium is agile and can collaborate in order to develop innovative and suitable tools for further crisis, because we will have further crisis.
Mm-hmm. Geoffrey, but you're VP Operations and Innovation at Takeda, so you have a global view, an international view of what happened during that crisis. Do you have any best practices you'd like to share with the public?
Oh, definitely. I was able indeed to see really across the world what was happening, also within our different parts in the company. There are two things that come up to my mind. So first of all is collaboration. I think we have seen it in the video as well. So how we stop working in a silo, but how we collaborate across the different industries. So also in Takeda we did the same. We were organized in a Plasma Alliance, and it's not only Takeda, but CSL, Biotest, and so on. A lot of companies joined the efforts together to actually then work towards a solution towards force what's hyper immune to create against the COVID-19 disease.
But you have to play in COVID conditions, which is a little bit more difficult.
Absolutely. And this is again and the second part I was going to mention that came up to my mind is agility and flexibility. Mm-hmm. And so we definitely worked in a very agile way together. So no physical presence, all by phone, of course. You work all together and you set that up. And also with the agencies that we worked on with, I think it was a very agile way of working. So we needed just to take the phone, call to some agencies like the FDA or the OMCL in Austria, and we could connect directly to them. And this was a one-to-one conversation, discussion, again, like the minister said, nothing to do with the quality of our product, but really finding ways on how we can speed things up. And it is also something I believe, like, if we need to learn something about this entire situation, is how can agility play a big role? Mm-hmm. And also how can agility play a big role in Belgium? Because I think we are really strong from a biotech perspective. I know I'm putting my head on as a bio.be. chairman. So we are really strong from a biotech perspective, but we need to continue to accelerate and take the momentum that we have.
Comparison is no reason, but can we say that Belgium has some assets here worldwide?
I think Belgium has a lot of assets. We have the small companies, starts up, and we have a lot of good examples, just as Eurogentec, and then we have bigger players in industrialization, and then you have your R&D. So really, I think all those assets together, and if the more we can work together, and I think this is also where Bio.be can play a role, the better it is. But we will also need to simplify sometimes the complexity, because not everything is so easy.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Joke Comijn. Now, shifting swiftly from the COVID crisis context to a more extended agility of the biotech business, boosting their growth. Joke, let's talk about how Ablynx coped with the COVID-19 crisis until now. And your company, Ablynx, is currently running preclinical and clinical trials of candidate medicine for severe autoimmune diseases. Have you had any impact on your pipeline, and how has agility helped you so far?
Yeah, first of all, we have to say that we have been quite lucky during the COVID-19 situation, because before the crisis hit us, we were already running a phase 3 trial, and we were expecting data from our most important trial at that moment, in myasthenia gravis patients, and we were lucky because the trial was just fully recruited before March. So we could have our clinical readout, and we have been publishing positive data in May, and on the back of these data, we could even finance our company in this challenging situation. So that was positive. Of course, as a biotech company, you have lots of opportunities in the company. You're not focusing on one asset and one indication, but we are testing our drugs in several indications. And for these clinical trials, we feel that recruitment of the trials is a bit slowed down due to the crisis, which is normal. That's not only at Eurogentec, it's in much more biotech and pharma companies. And we see a difference between the trials that we are running in Eurogentec and the trials we are doing with a partner, because the trials we are running at Eurogentec, they are slowing down but not paused. So we continue to recruit the patients, we find them. The reason why we can continue also recruiting patients is that because we are trying to find solutions focusing on telemedicine, but also home infusions, so that we can continue to treat our patients in the clinical trials. Trials that we are running with partners, most of them are paused because there, for instance, the collaboration that we have with J&J, we are working there with AML patients. They are very fragile, they are very vulnerable, and therefore it's logic that you then pause that situation. So it depends on trials that we are running, but we have to be flexible and finding solutions to make sure we can continue the recruitment, not to slow down too much our clinical trials.
Okay, very good. Cédric, I come back to you. In June, there was the announcement that Novacep will probably produce the active substance of one of the candidate vaccine in a Belgian facility you are leading. But could you elaborate a little bit on how your company has seized this opportunity, and how the challenge was to mobilize talents to fill in the new line of the industry and to accomplish your promise?
Yeah, so how we seize this opportunity, I mean, this is an opportunity that we had to seize. It's very important for the health of the European, for the health of the world. So the interrogation at the COMEX level from Novacep was on a pretty short term. So we decided really to jump into this adventure. And first of all, we've been proud to be recognized by AstraZeneca as one of their potential, at that time, partner. And I think this is the recognition of the investment and of the knowledge of Novacep and Enogen in particular, which is the Belgian entity, in terms of virus production. Because that's why we have been elected. It's because we are virus producer. And a project like this is entering into the production of a vaccine at a pace that I've never achieved in the industry. It's a big challenge. And we took the opportunity to mobilize the ecosystem of the Wallonia to help us in this adventure. And so we've been in contact with BioIn, with essenscia, in order to capitalize on the recruitment strategy, on the expertise through our universities, to our high school, to our center of training, such as the CEFOSHIM, and we have entered into a partnership with Randstad, Tempo Team for the recruitment, with the CEFOSHIM for the training. We have also capitalized on several other actors. And BioIn is certainly one of them, with whom we have had a lot of contact, with bio.be as well. And it's an example that together we can achieve great things, and agility is something that we can do, but it deserves to be elaborated on a network basis because it's much more efficient.
Mm-hmm. But while preparing this, you also spoke about the challenge of mobility of the workforce. So this is something that may be a little bit improved in Belgium, how to access the site for the people who are working in industry.
Yeah, so I'm based in the Biopark in Charleroi, and obviously this is a real great success since the implementation of the ULB 25 years ago. The employment market there is pretty tense, so there is big companies and a lot of companies that are fighting for the same talent. So our wish as an employer is really to be able to source our employee from other eco-environment, and I'm thinking about Liège, Namur, Brussels, the Flanders, and actually it's pretty difficult. I'm coming from Liège, and I had to commute by car every day. If I wanted to do it by train, it took me 3 hours and a half in the morning and 3 hours and a half in the afternoon. And the two cities are separated by 96 kilometers. So I can understand that it's a big hurdle for the young people that are in Liège or in Namur or Brussels to join Charleroi and to be part of this pretty strong and dynamic ecosystem which is placed there. And it's something that we need to be aware of, and it's an important investment in infrastructure that the public and the government should do if they want to pursue in the development of the bio-industry. Because mobility and having access to the knowledge, the expertise, and the talent everywhere in the country is something which is very important for the growth of this sector.
Mm-hmm. Very good. For Geoffrey, there is also digitalization that may be key for the success of for the coming years. So you're pretty active on this?
Yeah, I'm quite active as well in our own company in digitalization. We think that's definitely the way to go. That's what we strongly believe. I think it opens opportunities that we have never seen. On digitalization, it's also very important to continue to be able to see the trees through the forest, because everything starts to be at a certain moment digital, right? So where do you need to prioritize? How do you need to move on? Here again, I think, and if we go back also to the talents, it's not easy to find the talents, especially when you go to data scientists, data architectures, etc. And mobility will play a role because, as my colleague, if you want to go to Lessines in the NO and you want to take the train, good luck to get with the train to the NO. And this is where it comes again to the talents, where we need to focus on. So that we develop actually also employees internally, but also getting access to external talents in this digital world. And this is something that I believe we need to focus on. With Bio.be, Frédéric, we also, as you know, we are trying to bring the companies together. And this is again where I see a big benefit of working together. So Bio.be acting as a glue between the different companies, and then to be able to do the advocacy against our ministers. So why is that important? Is because there are gaps. There are definitely gaps. And we all have those gaps, but it's so difficult sometimes. I mentioned about the complexity on how to reach at a certain level within our organization, within the administration. Well, it's then to see, well, if we combine our efforts, if we understand where we need to move, how can we also identify the gaps and then do the advocacy against that? I think the digitalization is critical to the success of our biotech industry in the future. As I mentioned earlier, we are at a really nice ecosystem, biotech valley in Belgium, and we need to continue to take advantage out of that. So now focusing, taking those opportunities and focusing on digitalization and really working together, industry, academics, the university, the different governments, we need to work together and to speed up those kind of things.
Okay, advocacy towards ministers. Well, we have one here, so let's start today. Mr. De Backer, you hear a lot of challenges and issues that we're still facing to the development of biotech here in Belgium. You imagine that there are some steps to be done
Yes.
to get that to the level of an industry?
Yes, absolutely. I think that we have a great ecosystem in place, and of course the questions that were put, I mean, on digitalization, for example, we have started an initiative, AI for Belgium, where we really bring everybody together around 3 or 4 big pillars. And one of the pillars is, of course, healthcare, because we have such a strong health ecosystem in Belgium. I think from the government side also, a lot of digitalization has happened in the healthcare sector, so a lot of data is available. I pushed through an open data strategy, so more data will become available, but I think there we can still go one step further. I'm not yet the Minister for Mobility, so I know it's the same issue for many companies. I live in Antwerp, also in the chemical industry. It's sometimes difficult because of mobility reasons to recruit people, although we are quite a small and a dense country. But I think the main issue for me remains that also policymakers should really be aware of what kind of riches we have here in Belgium. So get to know the industry better. I think that's part of the advocacy, I think, where you really need to step it up. Because now with the COVID crisis, it has been shown that and in Flanders, and in Brussels, and in the Walloon region, there is this whole ecosystem lying in front of us. And so connecting all the dots, I think, is going to be an important one. The second point, I think, is that we see a lot of startups in Belgium coming out of university, coming out of research centers, but often they're very quickly bought up by the larger pharma companies. As such, that's not a problem because it allows them also to grow and it allows the technology to come to the market. But of course, you see, and I've been also in the European Parliament, that also there we need to take steps, I think, at the European level to create a European capital market and also to make sure that we have bigger investment funds pushing these companies forward on their own for a longer period of time. And we have some success stories, of course, again in Belgium, but I think that's also a key issue that should be tackled at the European level. So those two together, where in Belgium you can connect the dots and I think policymakers should be much more aware what kind of resources are being put in there. People who have university training find a job. There's a lot of innovation, development, technology, knowledge, which is here in Belgium, where really the rest of the world is quite envious about. And so we should really try to capitalize on that and combine it also with the European strategy of really pushing companies forward, not only in Europe, but also globally.
Geoffrey, would you like to comment?
Yeah, so definitely one thing you mentioned is that we are looking as Belgium in this digitalization. And then you mentioned the different pillars. For us, as an industry, it's still very, very vague actually on how to navigate. So I get much more information out of other countries than out of Belgium with respect to the digitalization. So I'm just wondering, is there anything that you believe that could be simplified? I like what you said, by the way, that you need to listen to the industry. I think that's critical. But I'm just wondering if you think that, what is your vision on a kind of simplification and navigating through all of that?
A couple of points there. I think that what we, for example, try to do with AI for Belgium is exactly that. We capitalized on Belgian expertise, bringing everybody together from the different sectors, even capitalizing on Belgian expertise, which is abroad. We brought people in from Harvard, MIT, Belgians who are working there, trying to bring their expertise back to Belgium. But I don't have to say to you, of course, that this is quite a complex country. We have a lot of things that we can do at the federal level, like, for example, an open data policy. We have a lot of healthcare data. We can share that more. But on the other hand, everything that has to do with innovation, research, and development is a regional competence. So what I think that we should do, again, is take it one step higher. And we know, for example, now that at the European level, a lot of new initiatives are being developed on the investment side, on the regulatory side. I think there we should really try, as a small country with an open economy, to really align ourselves with this European strategy and really put a lever on what's going on at the European level. And I think that will drive also some of the companies and some of the ideas and the knowledge in Belgium together to really make that jump into an international level. And I think that is really the way to go. And I think that policymakers, whether they're at the regional, the local, or the federal level, can really also align to that, because then you have a common goal and a common pathway forward.
Very good. And you mentioned the challenge of raising money. And if I can ask you the question, Joke, your company, Ablynx, raised an enormous capital of private investment of money, about 700 million euros, through US investment mostly, so which is great. Now, is it possible or is it not possible to raise a large amount of money here in Europe that we have to go over the ocean to catch the money over there?
Yeah, what we have been seeing at Eurogentec is in 2014 we did our IPO on Euronext Brussels. So some of the European investors entered then our company, a small amount. But by that time we have already looked at the opportunity also to raise money in the US, because we feel at that stage that we were then in phase 1 of clinical trials. So that means that you don't have evidence yet that your product has a benefit for a patient, and that's what you would like to see. And we went also with our story to US investors, and they were willing to support our company for a long period, so long-term investors, at the time that we did not have that evidence yet. So that was a tremendous step for Ablynx to finance the company in such a way so that we have the financials to start this clinical development through phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, because these phases are needed to create value for your company, because with clinical data, with positive clinical data, you create that value. You also see that at our stock price. By having phase 2 data, phase 3 data, your stock price is moving up. You have more value in your company. But we have been investing to see European investors as much as we are seeing US investors, but there we see that more of the US investors have stepped in our company. What's the reason for that? For us, it's also difficult to understand, because we have a great story to tell, but our story is based into science. A lot of biotech companies are based in science, and we have a little bit the impression that sometimes European investors are not always on the same line on the value of that scientific story before you have this clinical data, and it all starts there. And now we are in a situation that we are in phase 3, we have these positive data, we have these long-term US investors on board, we have some very important European investors also on board, but if you look at the percentages, it's over 85% of the money is coming from the US for Ablynx. So you see a clear difference, and we love to have more European investors, but the story is sometimes difficult to transfer, and maybe they're also a bit less risk averse, so they are a bit, they don't want to take the risk in phase 1 maybe to step in, but now we are of course a company with much more value, and thanks to our US investors we can do it like this.
It has to do with size also, because the capital markets are still split in 27 smaller divisions, and it makes it more difficult for the funds to raise capital, to grow, and so they have to spread their investments over a limited amount of companies. And I think that is also a reason why already for 10 years I've been saying this, that the barriers on the capital markets in Europe should really disappear, so that larger funds might emerge which really go into this mid-cap segment. And I think that's something that we really need to develop in Europe in order to keep those investors also here in Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree. Yeah.
The investment in infrastructure, and then also to maybe able to industrialize the biotech, to have the biomanufacturing here in place. And is there a risk that you have to fly with the technologies over the ocean to go where's the money to do the bioproduction, or can we be confident in the future here to have more manufacturing activities of the businesses?
We are not really doing our manufacturing ourselves. We are working with Lonza, so for Ablynx it's working well like this. And if you talk about technologies, we have to say we have developed our technology in Belgium, and it's also the technology that we will continue to use in our R&D for our R&D developments. So for us, manufacturing is not that difficult story, but I think for the other panelists.
It's also about skill. You need those people to do that kind of high-tech manufacturing. So again, you come to the point of, are you able to recruit enough staff and personnel to do that? I think that from a government side, we have taken a lot of initiatives, cutting taxes, giving incentives. I think that is in Belgium quite well arranged, but it's a matter of the talent. And of course, because you have this ecosystem, I think a lot of international players also value the fact that you can reach out to these other players. And that's an added value that I think that is often underestimated.
I fully agree. And if we want to develop a biotech industry, which makes sense in Belgium, we also have to incentivize and to support the biomanufacturing, because that's where also the economic value of this industry is, and it's not as much delocalizable as IP or other technologies. So once you construct the plant is still there. And at Novacep, I think we are a very good example of that. So we are one of the few virus vector manufacturers in the world, and probably one of the best and one of the most knowledgeable. And we are able to attract US customers. So our main market is actually in the US. And companies from the East Coast are coming in Belgium to do their manufacturing and to commercialize their product in the US. So that's really a sense where we can put value. We can have jobs, we can have innovation as well. Unfortunately, as a CMO or CDMO representative, we have the feeling that the policymaker, government, European unions don't really feel biomanufacturing and manufacturing in general as a priorities. Most of the incentives are going through academic, startups, innovation, new product, and the industry, because we are part of the industry, it's important for the economic development of a country, and more incentive and more policy in the development of biomanufacturing is certainly a must if we want to maintain bioindustry in Belgium.
I have a little provocative question, and I start with you, Mr. De Backer.
Always for the politician.
Yes, thank you for coming. Do you believe that people understand what it is about biotechnologies? Do you even believe that decision makers or parliament's members do understand the business of the biotechnologies, knowing that it's kind of buzzwords today?
Yes.
But don't we have a role of education, information of the lay public, but also decision makers, what it is about to do the next steps together? What do you think about this?
Yes, totally. I think I'm one of the few who has a biotech background who is in politics. And it helps, of course, not only for the biotech sector, but also a little bit more in general. They have this scientific background and to make decisions based on facts. It always helps, I think, in life to base your decision on facts. But yes, you really have a huge role to play, because I think what was mentioned and what you see here is that it's really an ecosystem. And if you take out one element, the rest of the ecosystem suffers from that. And so really doing advocacy on what biotech is about, and also even sometimes a little bit deeper into some of the scientific discussions. Up to now, and we're 6 months in the crisis, I still have to explain to journalists and to other people in politics the difference between a PCR test, an antigen test, and a serologic test, antibody test.
And it is complex.
And it is complex, yes, but these basic things and also the whole process behind of logistics is totally not understood. People think that you can buy PCR machines and PCR reagents off bol.com, which is of course not the case. There's a whole procedure that needs to be followed. It's not, and so this has to be better understood, I think. Also, if you're going to reshape the healthcare system, because ultimately the whole healthcare system and pharma, biotech and innovation research is a part of that, is of course to serve the patient in a better way, not only in Belgium but globally. And I think that therefore it is important that policymakers across the globe, but also in Belgium, really understand what are the needs of the sector, what are the needs, the gaps that still need to be filled in, and also what are the next steps. Because often making policy takes time. If you decide something or you think of something today, it often takes 4, 5, 6 years before you see it in reality. So you really have to think ahead. And in biotech, it's a sector which moves so fast that really that advocacy is also important. What's next and what's coming after that? And what do you need to get there? And I think that is really the advocacy focus of the next couple of months and years, taking the policymakers on a path forward, saying this is what's going to happen, what we foresee for the next 10 years, what do we need to be ahead? Because that's where the real difference is being made.
Geoffrey, you'd like to say something?
Yeah, so you mentioned it takes a couple of years, 4 to 5, 6 years. What you need to be very careful on is when we will make decisions for any investment, we are looking on this agility again. And I'm scared when you mentioned the time that this would take to educate or to do some policymaker, because I think this is where we as an industry compare sometimes to the government are acting at a different pace. So we are acting at a very quick pace, as you mentioned, and then you lag behind due to complexity. And this is where I can compare with our Food and Drug Administration in the US, that is acting much more at the same kind of pace as we do. So if we in Belgium want to continue to be in a pole position in the biotech, we will need to take action. And this is also what we really want to advocate from a bio.b point of view.
For me, the answer there is again a European approach. I mean, the EMA should at that level, I think, play much more the role of an FDA. And I think that we've had these discussions when I was still in the European Parliament, where, for example, the market access is already largely dealt with at the European level, but for example, reimbursement and derogations are all at the national level. So also a harmonization of these kind of efforts might also limit the fact that you have to have 27 times the same discussions with 27 different policymakers. You can have it once, you can have a decision, and it increases the agility, because I completely agree with you. If you see what has been going on for the last 6 months, how the thinking about the virus has evolved only in this small period of 6 months, it shows that you need this agility also from the government side. But what I've seen over the last 6 months from the government side is a lot of agility. A lot of the Chinese walls which were installed between organizations, agencies and public institutions were broken down exactly to put people together. It's one of the first things that I did when I started the task force, is saying, okay, we have to fix this problem, so we put everybody together. It's no longer first you, then you, then you. No, everybody together, we decide together, we decide on a course forward. And it allows also, if you take a decision and 2 or 3 weeks later you see, oh, this is not working, to bring everybody back together and say, okay, it's not working, what are we going to do next? And this agility will also be needed indeed from the government side, but it is possible because I've lived it for the last 6 months in the task force. It's basically a small SME where everybody is made responsible and everybody works together. And I hope, that's my hope for the next government, that this kind of way of working can persist and can really be transferred also into the mentality of the people working there, because, and that's the final word I'm going to say, we also have top-level people and really excellent people in our administrations.
Absolutely. Yeah, you mentioned the word small. I think small group of SMEs is important versus a large group of SMEs that are trying to make something, because this is where agility plays a critical role. And my ask is also, how can Belgium continue to take a pole position at the EMA or at the European level, because I think that's where we can also still influence and play a big role.
You must play a key role, but don't you have the feeling that there is some kind of precaution against technology? That now there are a lot of debates around genome editing, CRISPR-Cas9, even access to biomaterial. It can be for bioeconomy or health biotech. So isn't that the problem now, that we put into question anything and that we're a bit losing the science-based evidence we can bring?
Yes, it's partly true. We have a very strict interpretation of the precautionary principle, which sometimes hampers us. And again, the only way to deal with that is to put evidence on the table and to be fact-based. And of course, decisions also at the policy level should be taken at a much more fact-based, fundamental discussion. And I think that we shouldn't be afraid of this. We shouldn't be afraid of this to tackle this head-on and to also put the facts on the table. And I believe that most of the policymakers, members of parliament, but also ministers in the government, are still susceptible to that. I mean, you can have a very short-term emotional outburst against certain types of technology, but I think you also, innovation, we often underestimate what it does on the long term, and I think that is also, I think, the goal of the industry.
Okay. Do you feel the support of the minister for...
Yeah, I'm happy to hear that, and especially the fact that he's mentioning that we have to educate people, that we have to bring these stories. And what we need in Belgium is really that success story in biotech, where we can show that we, from an experiment, from our research, we can bring one asset to the market. These stories we really need, because then people will understand how biotech is working, because we do a lot in the back office, of course. If we do clinical trials, not a lot of people do understand what we are doing. But if you have that success story of bringing that product to the market, then I think we will make an important step, not only for Argenix or Galapagos, but for the sector as a whole, and that's what we need.
Thank you. We promised the people looking to this online show that they might be able to ask some questions. Tineke, do we have a question from the virtual floor?
Absolutely. It was a very interesting debate and we received lots of questions. We won't be able to pose them all, but still a couple of them will be posed here. And the first one is for Minister De Backer. We touched the base upon Europe. And the first question is, where does Belgium stand on the EU joint procurement initiative of the COVID-19 vaccines? Minister De Backer.
We are active participating in this, of course, and there is an agreement within the European Commission to do this jointly, and I think that's the right way to go. I think that if the different European countries act together, they have a much stronger position in these type of negotiations, and I can only hope that many of the companies, be it biotech or pharma, are going to be successful really early on, so then we have an embarras de choix. But I think that this type of negotiations are, of course, very difficult, very time-consuming, but I think that we are playing, as the Belgian authorities, a very active role with a couple of people around the table, and I know it's advancing in the right direction. So yes, we are trying to also take the lead in these kind of discussions.
Okay, thank you. Another question is also regarding Europe and an announcement that was done last week to also set up an equivalent of the US BARDA, which is the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority in Europe. And so we already have a very good ecosystem, as was said here today. So wouldn't it be a good idea for Belgium to play a major role in it? Again, Minister De Backer.
Yes.
Yes, very good. So let's make it happen. I would say that's a task for the next federal government. If people are listening, please note it down. Let's move to another question, which is more related to HR topics. So a couple of companies said that there is a need to have talents, and sometimes, several companies need to have the same talents. So how do you manage that? And maybe linked to that, the second question is about talents and digitalization. So shouldn't we imagine an open lab or maybe training centers to do so? So I leave it up to Frederik to decide who can answer, or maybe if there is a volunteer in our panel to do so.
Well, I just can introduce the answers, knowing that we have initiatives supported by the sector. We have training centers such as Cefochim and Vitalent in Belgium, and that is supported by social partners within Covalent. But we also different types of operations. So we might invest more in this kind of infrastructures and equipments to answer better the need of the companies. And then also in the education, we may adapt a little bit more the programs to the economic context in which they are developing their curricula. So, but maybe the vision of the companies are different from your expertise and your expectations regarding training and talents.
Yeah, we are happy to hear that you launch such type of initiatives, because it's really needed. We have in Belgium a lot of talent. We have good universities, so a lot of these students can come to our companies to work, and we have a lot of people with great scientific knowledge. We have also academic centers, we have university hospitals where we can closely together with and share the knowledge, so that works well. But any initiative that would support, in addition, how to train people for dedicated expertise that we need in growing biotech companies, we can only support that. So,
Cedric, you'd like to add something?
I think it would be very important to identify the functions where we need additional resources. And I'm thinking about quality, regulatory, process characterization when you do process manufacturing. That's all a type of profile that are heavily wanted on the market and for whom companies are competing. It would be wise for the academic center, the high school, and the training center really to focus on a very practical approach on how to train young talent, young people that are willing to enter in the industry on those specific jobs which really are not yet fully masters, at least in university or high school.
Mr. De Backer wants to comment.
To this, because I think it's indeed important to keep in touch also with academia. When I was still in university, I was in the board of the university, and we had to fight. It was the beginning of 2000. to have bioinformatics included in the curriculum at that moment. It was just, the human genome was just published, and so, and people were saying, why is this neat? Because data is going to be important. We were looking ahead. The same went when I was doing my PhD. I did it also in Ghent, and I reached out to a couple of companies to see what they were doing to find out what my next career move would be, but it was not a basic part of the curriculum. Now it has changed, and it's very well that because you're at a campus where you're surrounded by companies. But I also want to stress that it's important to keep the education broad, because if you're going to limit people too soon, then maybe if the job that you're trained people for is disappearing, then they have to do a whole new set. And so I think it's a mix of both. So for example, one of the solutions that I always proposed was, why don't you invite students into your companies to have them train for a month or 2 months to at least have a taste of what is going on. I know it's a pre-investment on education, but I think these kind of collaborations can really be helpful.
I fully agree, and this is probably something that needs to be structured at the academic level. And my point was certainly not to restrain the university to be a source for the industry. I mean, academic and fundamental research is extremely important for the ecosystem and for the biotech in general in Belgium. But in terms of specialization, you can have a diploma of specialization in regulatory, in quality assurance, in process characterization. If your wish after your master's degree is to enter in the industry, that will give you certainly a very good asset to enter.
Tineke, we're back to you.
Yes, and the last question is around the upcoming distribution and logistics of the COVID-19 vaccine. It's also for the minister. How agile is the Belgian process for this? So a lot of processes have already been set up until now, but the next step, once the vaccines will be there, will of course be the vaccination of all our people here in Belgium. So could you elaborate on that process, Minister De Backer?
But it's an ongoing discussion, because in Belgium, of course, the first line of the healthcare takes a lot of responsibility. And if we're going to add on that also the vaccination, not only for the flu now, but also for COVID later on. So we're really having open discussions with different stakeholders to see how we best organize this. And of course, we have to have the manpower to do it, and we have to have the logistics behind to do it. But this planning is already ongoing with the different stakeholders.
Okay, thank you. And with this, I would like to thank, of course, all our speakers of the debate. That is Federal Minister Philippe De Backer, Joke Comijn from Argenix, Geoffrey Pot from Takeda, and Cédric Volanti from Novasep. Thank you very much for your contribution to our debate. And now we will move to a couple of other videos. It's behind the scenes videos of 3 of our member companies, and we will see how they use agility to raise the bar, how they use agility to take upon challenges that are going on. And we'll have a look. Join me in watching videos from Ablynx, a Sanofi company, Eurogentec and Mithra.
Ablynx is a Belgian biopharmaceutical company established as a spin-off of the VIB and the University of Brussels in 2001 and acquired by Sanofi mid-2018. We have 450 highly qualified employees here on site in Ghent. Based on our unique nanobody platform, we develop novel medicines for patients that will really make the difference. In 2018, for instance, we have brought to the market the first ever nanobody-based drug, and this is a drug to treat a rare blood disorder. Nanobodies are really novel therapeutic proteins that are derived from heavy chain-only antibodies from camelids such as llamas and alpacas. We do have a broad R&D portfolio with a lot of programs for future therapies for immuno-oncology and immunology. Agility is a prerequisite for becoming a successful company. Being acquired by a big pharma company is quite an event with many opportunities also with some challenges. Within the Sanofi Group, Ablynx is the center of excellence to discover and develop nanobodies. And we are really an essential component of the innovative strategy of Sanofi. Today, we still have our entrepreneurial biotech spirit. We have a collaborative culture, a solution-oriented mentality, and we use these characteristics together with the development possibilities in big pharma to really explode the best of both worlds. The future is bright for Ablynx, and soon we will invest in the expansion of our fermentation capacity and expand and optimize our laboratories here on the site.
Eurogentec is a spin-off of the University of Liège, established in 1985. At this moment we have 430 people worldwide, 350 of them here in Liège, Belgium. We are one of the main players in the field of genomics and proteomics. We are also a major supplier of products and services for molecular diagnostics, such as reagents for PCR. And of course, we are also a CDMO, a contract developing and manufacturing organization in the field of biopharmaceuticals. In the summer of 2020, we finished the construction of a new state-of-the-art facility for the production of biopharmaceuticals. In the meantime, we already hired 80 people, 80 scientific staff, and we are planning to hire another 70. This facility is really the most advanced facility in the world for the production of plasmids, so DNA vaccines. Agility is looking ahead and making the right decisions about technologies that we are investing in. Eurogentec was the first to invest in plasmids and DNA vaccines already 15 years ago. Since then, we have been improving our technologies. Also, we have, in just a few months' time, been able to convert our production facility so that in the next few months we are ready for the large-scale production of COVID-19 vaccines. Agility is also the speed in which we have been developing a new protocol, a new formulation for PCR reagents against COVID-19. And at this moment, more than 30% of all the tests done in France and Switzerland are done with our reagents. Our vision is to become the world-leading CDMO in the field of gene therapy. Our passion is to develop agile and innovative solutions for sustainable products and services that can contribute to the improvement of life sciences and healthcare.
Mithra is a Belgian biotech company based in Liège and dedicated to improving women's quality of life. We develop a range of innovative products based on estetrol, E4, and a native estrogen produced by the fetal liver during pregnancy. 3 late clinical stage products in development in contraception, menopause, and perimenopause. Agility is part of Mithra's DNA since the company creation. Mithra has been adapting to its environment rapidly over the years. We moved away from commercial distribution in Benelux and Europe to focus completely on R&D and manufacturing. Mithra is today a company listed on the Euronext stock exchange with international R&D collaborations. Mithra is also exploring new therapeutic horizons for E4 beyond women's health into neuroprotection, wound healing, and more recently, COVID-19. Being agile and going international go hand in hand. Research is global today. Establishing international contacts is fundamental. Going international to challenge your ideas, your strategies, to find new competences or develop new capabilities will only help you reach excellence. So feel confident going international early onwards, because the reputation of the Belgian biotech sector is high. As a biotech, you are continuously confronted to scientific, technological, financial constraints, and starting a company from scratch obviously requires a solid entrepreneurial mindset. Being resilient, agile, and creative helps you push boundaries every day.
I have here Frederik Druk with me to do the closing remarks. Frederik, welcome. Now I can ask the questions.
Please feel free.
Yes. So when hearing the people in our panel debate, when seeing all of those videos, I really feel the positive vibes. And I think that we can say that, that we're in pole position, was also mentioned by Geoffrey. But are we ready to race?
Yes, definitely. At Bio.be, we think that it's very important to continue to support innovation at federal level here in Belgium, the R&D tax incentives. This is also some way to attract investment in research and development here in Belgium, but also maybe in investment in R&D centers. And this is something very supportive and important for the ecosystem. But secondly, we have also to have a view on sustainable funding, maybe to help also the scaling up of the smaller biotech companies. They're mature now, but they not only need the support to R&D, but also means maybe to keep partnerships, to acquire technologies or products to sell on the market, maybe to help them also on the way on mergers and acquisitions, a new model of cash burning and cash flow. And then third, we have not large amount of money here in Belgium nor in the country, in the regions. We have to foster our public-private investments in research and in key enabling technologies. We have to consolidate some of the research centers we have, and we have to do also this at university platforms level.
Okay, so when when we talk about innovation and supporting biotech, people obviously think about the things that you just mentioned, but shouldn't we also think about human capital as well?
Yes, of course, and we spoke about this during the debate, so talents are key now for the success of the biotech business here in Belgium, the biotech industry, for all kinds of biotechnologies. And so it is key, and we have to still invest more in the infrastructures and equipments we have. And we do that, as I said, Bio.be with Essenscia. We have the support of the Covalent, the sector training fund that is investing in Vitalent and Cefoshim, but also all other operators we can play with. And this is for the urgency. But since we have some structural needs for the last 10 years, for example, and we have shortages on the labor market, we might also ask universities and higher education schools to put into place programs that can answer also the needs of their economic context.
Mm-hmm. It was also mentioned during the debate, we have the talents, but talents also need to be mobilized to get there. So how important is mobility, and also related to that then logistics for future therapies?
Yeah, logistics, of course, is a part of the value chain. So you need it, and if you have large logistics centers, you can also attract investors that are willing maybe to put a biomanufacturer here in the context of Europe. We can attract American investors or Asian investors here. So logistics is key, and of course mobility, we have had that also during the debate. It might be a hurdle for some of the workforce to reach here access to plants or R&D sites. So we might think about how to ease the way.
Okay, very good. And another topic that was also highlighted during the debate was about simplification. So, yeah, I think another important element is simplify the complex in our regulation.
Yes, regulation is good and is very important in the kind of business we are developing in the biotech sector. But if it's too complex, then maybe it can be disappointing for investors and companies that are developing the products and technologies here in the country. So if you take the example of access of raw material, biomaterial, it can be for developing and producing cell therapies, or even biomaterial, biomass to create create a bioeconomy network here in Belgium, it is not so easy. So we might check the regulation and how we can decomplexify the regulation. On the other side, we do also have, we see the importance of the evidence-based and science-based decision-making. And so we have to balance now with the precautionary principle we talked about a little bit earlier. And it is important, and this debate has to be taken at EU level and at local level, no ideology, but science and evidence-based.
Yeah, and so you touched upon it, and it was said during the debate as well. Europe also plays a very important role, and since we are at the heart at Europe and we have our ecosystem here in Belgium, what should we do more and better in Europe and on the international market?
Belgium has a key role to play at European level, and its voice must be heard. And here in Belgium, we are also to do on our homework by aligning the regions and the federal on some positioning we like to defend. So we have to be present, and there are many opportunities. We can speak about EU for Health or Horizon Europe. There's a lot of things to do. We have to be present at European level also to co-decide with the partners in which direction we like to go and to support our biotech industry this way. And secondly, we plea also for international marketing of Belgium assets. In a post-COVID era, I hope that there will be more state visits, more economic mission, and a reconnection with stakeholders, with markets and investors.
Okay, very good. So aligning the regions and a better positioning and more marketing of Belgium in Europe and international, very good. What Frederik has been saying are actually 10 very ambitious points that we have as bio.be that you can also find in our memorandum that you can see now on the screen. And after the event, we will be sending you this memorandum so that you can have a good look of all the ambitions, etc., that we have for the next federal government. Now, Frederik, there's a lot. A lot of points have been mentioned, and we do know that we cannot do everything in one day. So what would be your final advice how to realize all of these elements with the next federal government, in collaboration, of course, with all the regional governments?
Yes, you're right. There's a lot of ambitions, and it's time now to grow and to scale up. And so what we can advise is for the future federal government is that we have some space for a dialogue that we can support on all kinds of measures that can be put into place in the way to ease the future of the biotech and to the growth of the biotech activities here in Belgium.
Okay, so I remember, or I will recall, a structured platform to have a dialogue with the biotech and the life sciences sector. And with this positive note, I also would like to thank you, Frederik, for the closing remarks and for the people at home or after at their desks, let's say. Stay safe. We hope to see you in person soon, and stay agile as well, and talk to you soon. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.